Okay, so in this video, I'm going to focus on something which is really underrated in the agency space and the business space. It's something which I see a lot of the big guys doing and they focus on and they talk about a lot, but many of the smaller guys or the people just starting out don't really do a whole bunch. And I think that's one of the reasons why there is that differentiation between people who are, really good at what they do, they have great agencies, and people who are not as good as what they do and, aren't at that point just yet. And so this is going to be a really important video if you're not at the point that you want to be. And first of all, if you don't know who I am, my name is Ben Lister, and I help agency owners, business owners by documenting all my learnings and findings right here on YouTube, which currently help me to make multi-six figures per year. So the thing that I'm focusing on today is actually expectations when it comes down to onboarding your clients and managing the expectations that they have. Now, the reason that this is super important is because clients often expect one thing, which is obviously the result that they get, right? But they have a very, very clear or some kind of understanding in their head, which means that they have an idea of how they're going to get to that point and what is actually going to happen. And the key to keeping on any clients is just fulfilling that expectation, right? Or just to change their expectation in order so that your service actually fills that expectation. And it's very, very difficult to actually change what you're doing for each client. So you start to, mold to their expectations. It's much easier to come in straight away, set expectations for your clients. And so your service actually fits in with that rather than changing your service for each client, because of course that wouldn't make much sense. And so let's say you're selling, ads to home improvement companies, right? The big thing that these home improvement companies want is more clients, more jobs, more customers, right? And so there's this loop experience going on, right? Where they start at the top and they are in this problem that they have now. They bring you on board, they go through this process of your service, and then by the time they've gone through the service, the problem is now fixed. On a month-to-month basis, they're getting new clients, new customers, and everything else that comes with that. Now, inside of this loop that we have, there's also many different steps in order to get to this point, and they will have an idea of how they're going to do this, how much work they're going to put in, how much work you are going to put in, how much communication there's going to be, how the service actually works. So, what specifics are we doing here? And so clients will have an idea in their head of how this is going to go. And based on the explanation that you've given them, clients will still have different ways of thinking. Some clients will think there's going to be lots of communication. Some clients will think there's going to be no communication at all. That you just get on with it and do it. Some clients are going to think that you call the leads for them, and some clients are going to think that they are going to want calling the leads, right? So there's many different expectations that clients will have, even though you give them the same instructions. This is just the nature of working with a bunch of different clients, and of course they're going to have different interpretations of what you say. And so what we need to make sure is that we give them a very, very clear picture of how this loop is actually going to go. Because if we try to, just get on with things and we don't try to change their loop, their expectations, then each of these steps is not actually going to correspond with what they expected, right? And there's going to be some kind of inconsistency there. And so when either they're being asked to do something that they didn't expect, or when you're not going to deliver something which they thought that you were going to deliver, then there's this inconsistency, there's this breakup, right? And this is when people start to fall off. They start to really not want to use the service. Maybe the initial thoughts aren't as good as they used to be, and so they just stop caring all that much. And so one way that we really set expectations with our clients at the moment is we give them a step-by-step guide through the onboarding process. So our onboarding process is actually quite lengthy. There's quite a lot of stuff that we need to know. There's a lot of different steps that we need to do. And so because of this, we have a really big onboarding video that goes through step-by-step all the different things that we're doing. And so we're demonstrating this loop. We're demonstrating this is where you are right now. These are the steps we're going to take. And by the end of this, this is the solution. This is the result you're going to have. And by clearly demonstrating that, and we give them specific dates as well. By this date, we're going to deliver this. By this date, we're going to deliver this. By this date, we're going to go live, all this kind of stuff. What we're doing here is we're giving them very, very clear set of instructions on how this is going to go. And so the expectations are being set from the beginning. And it's super, super important that just because you've sold someone and you've shown them the pitch and you've shown them basically how it goes, that you then reset expectations once they actually come on board and you have this initial conversation. Whether this is just dropping them an email, whether this is dropping them a video for them to watch, whether this is having an onboarding call, you just want to show them, okay, this is exactly how it's going to go. Do not expect to have, a bunch of sales in the first week. Do not expect to have 1 million leads tomorrow. This is how it's going to go, and this is completely normal. And you almost want to set some kind of like negative expectation in there, because If, for example, you're going to say, we'll get you 10 leads a week, something like that. You also want to say, look, we are aiming to get you 10 leads a week, but some weeks that won't happen. Some weeks we're going to give you 5, right? And this is completely normal. If we give you 5, just know that the next week we're going to be working twice as hard to get you 10. Something along those lines. And so then clients know that if something is going wrong, there's something which can actually change here. And so it's not just a case of, just telling them that you're going to give the best result ever, and then they just expect that result every single time, but just educating the client and knowing that every single step along the way, if something does go wrong, you have accounted for it. And I think sometimes just by telling the client that like this is normal and this is fine, then it kind of eases their concerns a little bit. And so if, for example, you're just going in and saying, we're going to give you the best result ever, and then you don't live up to that result in the slightest, but it's still like good results, then they're still going to be annoyed. There's still going to be this gap that they have. These expectations are just not going to be met, and it's going to be a pretty inconsistent process for them. Another thing which we're doing, which is actually quite specific to our niche and what we do, is we are giving the lead list that we use to our clients and basically just having them verify it before we actually go and do anything. And so we are basically setting the expectations there of like these are what the leads are going to look like. This is exactly the lead list that we've taken. We give them like a sample. And so then they can start to go through those leads and start to see what it's actually like. And so then if we go and actually generate appointments with those leads, if we actually are successful with those leads, then there can be no sort of argument, or there can be no sort of doubt about who we're actually reaching out to, because this is the lead list that we've used, and this is exactly how we've gone and found those people. We've used this job title, we've used this kind of industry, we've used this kind of location, this kind of employee size, all this kind of stuff. And so they know, for example, if we book a call with someone that's in that lead list, then they should, they have to accept it almost, right? Because we've come to an agreement before the campaign actually started. And at the end of the day, clients just have an idea in their head of how the services are going to go, how your system's going to work. And because many services that you have, many agencies, they're not public with how things go. It's not as if you can just log into a SaaS company and see, a step-by-step process of how this all goes. And so you can see, this is how we do the whatever the service is, right? You only see that once you actually come on board. And because most of you are going to have, less than like 10 clients, even at the very, very biggest agencies might not have more than 100 clients, this process is, it doesn't happen all that much. And so you need to give a step-by-step process. You need to tell them exactly what's going to happen and set those expectations early of the process, the results, how this is going to go, all that kind of stuff. And so they can actually mold it in their head of what is happening, because everyone will have an expectation of some capacity. If someone's going to give you money, if someone's going to pay you to come on board, they're going to expect certain things and they're going to expect a certain flow. And if you aren't able to generate that, if you aren't able to replicate that and give them what they're expecting, then they're just not going to be happy. Even if the results are actually good, because it's not what they expected, it's a little bit different. They might feel like they've paid for something they didn't want to, or something like that. And so you just got to make sure that you actually meet their needs and expectations. And you don't do this by changing your service. You do this by changing their expectations and setting the ground rules very, very early on. This is what's going to happen. These are the results you're going to get, and this is the process. By the way, if you're looking for more clients for your agency, first link in the description. It's not some email opt-in, phone number opt-in. No one's going to be blasting you 7 days a week with emails. It's literally just a video of me explaining what my company does and how we've done this many times before. But yeah, if you don't have to click it, if you don't want to, I don't really care if you do or not. But yeah, like the video, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.